the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. My name is Oonagh Proudfoot and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Relations in the Office of External Relations at Acadia University. And it's my pleasure, absolute pleasure, to be here with you this evening, joined by 3 of our previous Outstanding Young Alumni Award recipients. And I'm going to provide a brief introduction of each of them before we dig in and start asking them all kinds of questions. I will also note that the chair of the Alumni Association Awards Committee is on the line with us this evening as well. So thank you, Moira, for joining us. And you are all in very good company, as we have just announced this year's recipient of the Outstanding Young Alumni Award. So the recipient for 2025 is stunt performer Maya Makatumbag Murray. So we're very, very excited to have just recently announced Maya as our recipient. And we will be presenting her with her award, as we did, I think, with all of you. I'm just looking to see if we have any COVID restriction recipients here at the at the Acadia Alumni Awards dinner on May 1st. So please think, if you're in the Halifax or Nova Scotia area, think about joining us. So here this evening, as I said, we have 3 past recipients of the Outstanding Young Alumni Award, and joined with us, in no particular order, I don't think we did it in any particular order, is Heather MacDonald, class of 2009, and Heather is our Outstanding Young Alumni Award recipient of 2019. Heather MacDonald, she, her, is an experienced servant leader with a demonstrated history of working in the community development and nonprofit sectors. Heather started her career at the YMCA and recently returned with experience serving organizations like Brigadoon Village, Empower Canada, McPhee Centre for Creative Learning, and JA Nova Scotia, Junior Achievement Nova Scotia. Heather holds an MBA and Bachelor in Recreation Management. She brings with her knowledge and skill in strategic and business planning, community engagement, marketing, fund development, and stakeholder relations. Heather's personal purpose is to help others find their place in the world. She is passionate about community engagement and youth. As a dedicated lifelong volunteer, Heather has been connected with community organizations, most recently with the Amera Blue Nose Marathon and the Dartmouth Adult Services Center. Heather has 2 children, Breton, who I believe is with us this evening, and Remy. Paul McFarland, class of 2010, and the Outstanding Young Alumni recipient of 2020. Paul was an Acadia student and member of the Acadia Axemen hockey team from 2006 to 2010. Paul graduated in the BBA program. The Acadia men's hockey program created an annual award in 2010 called the Paul McFarland Award, recognizing an Acadia hockey players' excellence in hockey, academics, and in the community. Paul was inducted into the Acadia Hockey Honor Roll in 2023 and is currently in his first season as the head coach of the Calgary Hitmen, WHL, hired in May 2024. Paul started his coaching career in hockey in 2012, spending 5 seasons in the OHL, 2 seasons as the assistant coach of the Oshawa Generals, and 3 seasons as the head coach of the Kingston Frontenacs. He spent the last 6 seasons prior to this year as an NHL assistant coach, in 2017 to 2019 with the Florida Panthers, 2019 to 2020 with the Toronto Maple Leafs, 2021 to 2024 with the Seattle Kraken. Paul's wife, Kelly, is also an Acadia grad from English in 2008 and education in 2010. And they have 2 children, Cooper, who is 12 years old, and Keaton, who is 8 years old. And Shannon Nordstrom. Shannon is from the class of 2013 and was the Outstanding Young Alumni Award recipient in 2023. Shannon Nordstrom is currently the International Liaison at Canada's Drug Agency, CDA. And prior to CDA, she spent a decade working in the health policy and research space. Originally from New Brunswick, Shannon's career has taken her across the Atlantic, allowing her to call England, Ireland, and Switzerland home at various points in her journey. Shannon worked as a consultant executing policy initiatives for organizations such as the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition, Novo Nordisk, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Flight Bladder Cancer UK. Prior to this, she earned an MSc from University College London in Global Health and Development, and then worked at the World Health Organization supporting the Ebola outbreak. In her spare time, you might find Shannon exploring Toronto with her husband, walking her furry friend Winston, or spending time with her family and friends. So thank you to the 3 of you for joining us here this evening. And as I mentioned, we've got a couple of people online who are with us. I certainly hope that they consider asking questions as we start to have this conversation. But we're recording the event as well, and we're finding that a lot of our virtual events that are posted in our library are getting views long after they're posted. And what we're finding in particular is an increase rather in the views of events, virtual events that have the common denominator of sort of what do I do with my future. We've had some young alumni, we've had a couple, one was called Golden Careers. So we were talking to folks who have chosen careers in sort of like that non-traditional space, and seeing just recently a huge increase in views on that one, for example. So just letting you know that, because we seem to have students and young alumni both who are sort of at that age and stage of life of what do I do next? So we want to pick your brains on your time at Acadia, sort of leading up to being chosen and receiving the OYA, and then what you've been up to since. So gems of advice or sharing experiences, challenges that you have, those are all things that we hope that you cover in our conversation this evening. So enough for me. What I'd like to do now is ask each of you if you wouldn't mind taking a couple of minutes to share with us essentially how you got to where you are now. And ultimately, it's whatever you want to share. I don't want to ask specific questions because I just want to leave the space for you to sort of say, this is sort of some of the key pieces that I think have made me who I am today. So maybe what we'll do is we'll start in reverse order from how I introduced you. So that means Shannon, you're up first.
Great. Thanks, Oonagh, and thanks for putting on the event tonight and the opportunity to be here. So as Oonagh said, my name is Shannon Nordstrom, and I was the 2023 award recipient. So I guess since I've received that award, it's been about 2 years. So I've been up to a little bit, personally and professionally. On the personal side of things, I was married in the summer to my husband, Sebastian. So that was very exciting. And he's from Finland, so we got married in Finland. So we had about, I guess, 50 Canadians make the trip across the pond. So that was very exciting. And then also recently in October, I took the leap and changed career paths, or not career paths, but jobs, and joined Canada's drug agency. And so I've been in that role about 4 months now. And I'm the international liaison, so kind of builds on the international experience I've had over the years. I guess looking back a little bit, my time at Acadia. So I spent from 2009 until 2013 in Wolfville, and absolutely loved my time at Acadia. I made tons of friends and got involved in many different things. One of those was the varsity volleyball team, so that was really good experience. And then I studied biochemistry. Originally started out in chemistry and then kind of switched over to biochemistry. And then I also was quite active in the extracurriculars. So I co-founded the Acadia Global Medical Brigades, which is a student-led nonprofit that brings healthcare to rural areas of Honduras. So we fundraise all year and then bring kind of medical supplies and bring healthcare to people that maybe normally didn't have access to healthcare readily. So that really kind of paved my way and sparked my interest in, I guess, the global health world, and kind of paved the way for my career to follow. So after my time at Acadia, I kind of ran with the interest in global health and applied to do a master's degree in global health in England. So I spent a year doing that, and then got my kind of dream job or internship right after at the World Health Organization. And I spent some time working on the Ebola outbreak, which is quite fascinating at the time, and a real kind of global emergency. I looked at the data coming in from West Africa and looked at, how many people were getting Ebola twice and what the kind of pattern was of disease spread. And that helped kind of create recommendations for how the world handled Ebola and kind of the guidelines around it. From there, I moved back to London and I worked in consulting in health policy. So did a lot of work at the European level, working on different disease areas, so cancer, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and rare diseases. And then after that, I started my own consulting company. And so did that for about 5.5 years, and also worked on similar kind of projects, I suppose, at the international level in health policy, until recently when I decided it was time to, I guess, kind of join the workforce in Toronto. I was working, remotely by myself, as a consultant, as a solo consultant. So I was really excited to kind of find a really interesting role here in Toronto, that kind of built on all of my experience to date. So excited for, what this new role brings and kind of the next stage.
That's great, Shannon. Thank you. And certainly, I smile when you reference Global Brigades, because I was so fortunate to join along on a trip to Honduras on one of the Global Brigade trips. So I'm interested that you use the word leap, and I'm going to come back to that when we get into some questioning. So thank you very much, Shannon.
Yeah.
And then I think we're going next to Paul. Yeah, reverse order. That's you up next, Paul. Over to you.
Thanks, Oonagh, and thanks for having me on here today. I guess just to walk quickly through my journey since my time at Acadia. I'll start back at Acadia and my experience at Acadia, just how influential my time there was on really where I am today. And I know going to Acadia, obviously for myself personally, it was both an education and a hockey decision to choose to come to Acadia originally. And as I slowly, became a part of the school and the community, probably just as important for me and my time there. I really started to develop relationships with people outside of the hockey program, whether it be going to schools or the Smile program, or end up being part of a lot of the different hockey camps that we would run as a Acadia hockey team. And by doing all those different things for me, it really obviously, I guess, reiterated to myself my passion for teaching, my passion for having an influence and helping others develop, whether it be on the ice or away from the rink, and that's really led to where I am today. And obviously, graduating at Acadia from the business program, quite frankly, in 2010, I thought I was leaving to go into an accounting firm and be in an accounting firm for the next so many years. And it's obviously been quite the opposite of what that's entailed for me. So from there, like everything, I think the one thing I would want to get across on this call, and I know my journey has been very influenced by it, is just how important relationships are. The relationships you build, and we all have great relationships from going to Acadia, and I know that's one of the things that I loved about that the place itself. You go back and it feels like it never changes. But for me, on my job side, or I guess the hockey side of my life, the relationships that I was able to build, whether it be as a player or as a coach, as I moved through my career over the last 13 years, have been critical to getting jobs and leading to different opportunities. And I look at the start of my coaching career, when I started as an assistant in the OHL with Oshawa. I got a call from DJ Smith. And I was really fortunate that he wanted to, hire me as an assistant coach. And to be honest, I hadn't talked to DJ since 2006. He was my last junior coach in 2006, and he was getting that first opportunity to be a head coach. And maybe I'd run into him once or twice over that 6 or 7 year span since leaving and going to Acadia. But it was that relationship, and obviously the opportunity with the general manager, Jeff Toohey, that kind of got my journey as a coach started. And again, really had nothing to do with coaching experience. It was more just on the relationship side. And I think that journey for me over the last, I guess it's been 12 years now, on the coaching end of it, has really led to me to where I am today. And each job, you get an opportunity to work with great people, great players in the job that I do, and you get an opportunity to teach, develop, inspire, hopefully a group. And it's those relationships that are really special, that go beyond just the job itself. And obviously in our profession or our business, you want to, especially where I am today in Calgary, you want to develop people and players, and we want to move as many players as we can to the NHL level. But it's those relationships sometimes that are even more rewarding than just the wins itself. So that's really been my journey to this point. Obviously, I say we because it's not just me. My family and I, Kelly, my wife, and our two boys have been a huge support over the last number of years. As you could see when Oonagh read out where I've been. We've lived in a few different cities. We've traveled to a few different places since our time ended in Acadia in 2010, and it's all been a great experience as a part of our journey. But it goes without saying how important everybody else is in making sacrifices for me to be able to do what I love to do. So that's really been my journey to this point.
Thanks so much, Paul. And you know, you really focused on and sort of reiterated the importance of relationships and such an intangible thing, right? So that's such a hard piece to sort of hand off as advice to folks because it is so intangible. But really want to come back to that and dig in a little bit on some relationships. We're very lucky in the Acadia alumni community, of course, as most of you would know, that we're such a close-knit community that some of those relationships are really easy to make for people, right? So sort of reaching out and saying, hey, can you chat with so-and-so about this kind of deal? And it works really well in our community. So thanks for bringing that up. And that leads you, Heather, over to you now with your sidekick.
Yeah, and hopefully my connection's okay. Yeah, so I can't believe it's been 15 years since I graduated from Acadia. I used to think about anyone who graduated 20 years ago when I was at Acadia. I was like, oh, they're ancient. And now here I am getting pushing that. But I started just as a recap, I started in music and felt like that was something I knew how to do going into university to a certain extent, and then slowly found my way over to recreation. And with that, it really sparked my background in camping and working with kids and you know, just building, Paul, there's a lot of parallels, just not with hockey, but building those relationships and trust that help drive you forward as well as, or me forward, as well as the collective group. And that's something that I've always had as a parallel, no matter what job I've had, and no exception, this last few years have been lots and lots of change. So I started out from Acadia. I was very fortunate at the time to get a job out of the university, and it was a mat leave. So I just grabbed it because I had 12 months at the Y, and it turned out to be 2.5+ years. But what it taught me is it taught me the foundations of a charity, what it meant to, you know, not only from like a regulatory standpoint with government, what is a charity, but also, you know, what does it mean to be a part of a collective impact place and space, and really solidified my passion for service leadership, or passion to, you know, help people find their place in the world and what they need. And so I've been dabbling in, but I think there's two things that have sown through my career. Is one is youth development and supporting youth and kids, just even giving one more opportunity for a kid to have a caring adult in their life where there may not be one. And then the other one is community. So how can I, you know, either sow some seeds or create the conditions in which a community can be stronger. And that is, you know, what, you know, I've said this probably every couple months. I say, you know, I use my rec degree every single day. And I know you do Oonagh as well, but like every single day, my degree there and what I was taught, and the mentors I had at Acadia. And that includes the music program as well. Like just it's an admirable and appreciative, because not a lot of people have that correlation right away in what they do. So I was, from the award side, I was actually pregnant when I received the award in 2019, and then had this guy in October of that year. And then COVID hit. So it was weird. But at that time, I was running a kind of a startup charity called the McPhee Center for Creative Learning in downtown Dartmouth. And that was, to me, probably my first baby, if I could be so bold. We had some amazing founders and people who brought the idea forward. And that's a place where I learned, you know, I'm not necessarily the idea person, but I can execute something pretty well if I think an idea has some momentum. And so it was weird being on mat leave and someone else taking care of that baby, and then I have this one and I don't know what's going on most days. And so having kids, and I've got two now, has like totally flipped my table of what success looks like. And because I am really in the sense of very career driven, I always have been. My parents were entrepreneurs, so it's been my example my whole life. So career equals success so much in my life. And then this little nugget came along, and then Remy, his brother, came along, and have a wonderful husband, and like have a lot of love for Dartmouth. But you know, there's so much wonderful and challenging friction for me between being a mom and being career driven, and wanting to continue that passion of supporting youth and supporting community where it's needed. So I would say, like, what have I been up to for the last 5 years since winning? I think it's just actually just trying to figure out who I am again. I've probably made more mistakes and learned more in the last 5 years than I have pushing a decade or two. I think perhaps that's what your 30s are for. But and then I'm slowly coming around to the idea that you know, you find your people and you hold on to them tight, because there's not many special folks out there. And I've been very fortunate to have several people in my career, in my home life, where that have just been total rocks for me. So it's, you know, couldn't do what I do without that support, and whether they're family or chosen family or my kids here. I think it has, you know, thinking less about a solo vision of what does success look like, and thinking more from a personal standpoint of what is collective unity and support look like. And I think that slowly I'm coming around to the idea that that's so important in the world. But yeah, and I'm still pretty driven, but I smile every day because of these guys. So that's a little bit about me. And like I say, Acadia, I tend to be extra proud, I think, for Acadia when someone starts talking about it, and I get really excited, especially at the Y. There's actually quite a few grads from Acadia there. So it's nice when when you're able to get in a room with another alumni, and to know you've had that experience of Main Street, or you know, snow on the hill, or whatever it may be. And it's just a really incredibly special place, and I feel very fortunate to have experienced it. So.
Well, you know, we love hearing that, right? And interestingly enough, we had a great conversation today with our newly appointed VP Academic, Dr. Ashley Consolo. And she was talking about sort of really Acadia reevaluating what our degree programs look like, and how we're going to change to evolve with what the world looks like now, and what young people are hoping for in terms of a university education. So really excited about where we're headed. And circling back to this conversation, and sort of really picking the brains of people who have come from Acadia's education system, and what really worked for them, and what maybe didn't necessarily work. Really appreciate all of your points, Heather, but want to dig in on some of those points for sure. And one of the ones that really stood out for me was when you referenced not really being a great idea person, but being a good executor. And so, you know, that's just one little tidbit for folks to take away from this conversation, is that nobody's good at everything. You know, Paul's good at hockey, but not curling, for example. So, you know, he was curling earlier today. That's where that came from. But, you know, understanding that, you know, everyone has a skill set, right? But not all the skill sets are the same. And it takes a team to action most successes. The other part is all three of you reference community. And I think the term community, you know, quite often can mean different things to different people, but ultimately the core piece of what community means is the same for everybody, right? It's just maybe what each individual's community looks like. You know, of course, I'm going to give a little shout out, as Heather already has, to the recreation management program at Acadia, which is now called community development, for obvious reasons, right? You know, and another part of the conversation that we were having earlier today is just what the near future and the future looks like for all of us. but particularly for young people who are finishing up their degrees now, or in their degrees now, or even thinking about whether or not they're going to go for a degree. And we've got some pretty uncertain times ahead of us, right? So lots of what you've referenced, each of you, factors into me trying to knit together a really good conversation with the three of you, so we can have some great tidbits for our listeners to walk away with. So what I'm going to ask, and you've all referenced how positive Acadia was, but I'm not going to let you off that easily. I am going to ask you about some challenges at Acadia as well. So maybe what I'll start, and some of you, or each of you rather, have touched on it a little bit, is telling us a little bit about skills you have to have facilitated your accomplishments so far. So you've talked about experiences, you've talked about teams, you've talked about places where you've worked, organizations. Paul, you touched on a couple of people by name. Let's talk about your skills and your skill set. So share with us, 1, 2, maybe 3 that you've sort of carried throughout your life, maybe improved and honed as you've gone through your life. But success doesn't come just, by, the wind blows in success, and you've all been incredibly successful. So what would you say that your individual skills are that have facilitated that success? And I won't ask anybody in any particular order. I'll ask you to just chime in when you have some thoughts.
The first one that comes to mind for me, which I think is a developed skill, but certainly, it's like a muscle you grow, and well, some muscles are grown in my life, some others are not. But lately, or at least the last 8 years, it's been a real attention to productivity excellence, which sounds very boring, but it's the concept of systems and processes and mindset and capacity and where you put your energy as a leader. And then also to filter that into my team, or at the team I work with, is something that it seems to be a little bit of a special skill I bring, and something asking the question, like, what precedent are we setting here by making this decision? Or how do we not reinvent the wheel? And what might excite, what is someone is saying they would like versus expressing, and then what might excite them to take their experience to a grander level. So that, and then I think on the flip side, for me is trying to, not always correctly, I think it's a learning journey, and it's okay, but trying to meet people where they're at. And there'll be I think sometimes like with the world today, you can't create a safe space for anyone, like that's theirs to decide, but trying to, wherever possible, be an ally or accomplice to support anyone on my team or whomever I'm serving at that time. So those are 2 for me. A skill that's also been improved, I think, that was not good, was writing. Like, I think that's something I probably should have picked up a little bit earlier in my career, or even actually in school. But I've gotten much better, and through hard work and knowing that that's absolutely a huge form of communication and getting your point across. So those are 3 things for me. Apart from having to learn finance, which I think everyone needs to and should. And it was certainly undervalued, and now is a pivotal part of being able to capture whether an organization's healthy or, what is the picture of it and its numbers. So that's a little random, but those are some skills that I think I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the randomness of it, Heather. Quick question for you, just in the sense of music. And does that still play, no pun intended, a piece in your life?
Absolutely. So it's weird for me. Like, I would speak to anyone, any crowd. I love it. I'm into it. I know that's not the most favorable thought for everyone in the world, but I love performing, and from a whether it's in a boardroom or with a group of staff, or I love being that, like, on stage presence, and that I kind of get a kick from that, and I get it in my career that way. I think to your point, I think probably I should be playing more music and as an outlet to bring kind of that
Sure.
soulfulness in. I just moved like 5 days ago and I found my trumpet and I'm like, oh, you exist. So I think there's some things that when there's space and time, and maybe in a decade, when the kids are a little bit older, we can find those passions again. But articulating it's a part of who I am and how I grew up, and that's something I value, and it's something I think musicians are some of the most creative and resilient people out there, because oftentimes it's a lonely journey or it's an individual journey, and it has a lot of entrepreneurial spots to it. So anyone that graduated like that I started at Acadia with, they're incredible. Like Carmen Braden, Edward Edmond, they're just doing some phenomenal stuff, and they're doing it because of their creativity and their passion for what they do. So I think it's inevitably in me, just because of the amount of hours of practicing and feeling engaged and united with people as a team. Whether it's band or choir or chorus or whatever it may be. It's in me all the time.
Amazing to hear all of that, and for us to be able to say that our current president at Acadia University is a music grad, as is the vice president of external relations. Nancy is also a music grad. So, Jeff, the president, speaks often about the harmony in working with people and being creative, to your point as well. And another Outstanding Young Alumni Award recipient that stands out for me is Lucas Oikel, and some of the amazing work that he's been doing, right? So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So
the last thing I'll say, last thing I'll say is just it takes more work to listen in a band or an ensemble than to play. So like I always really appreciated that, is when is your time and when is not your time, and it taught me a lot about that at a young age.
I should join a band. No. Shannon and Paul, over to you for skill set.
I would say maybe, I don't know if this is, I think maybe it is a skill set, but my first one I think would be relationships. So when I'm in the workplace, I care to get to know who I'm working with, and I like to build strong, bonds with my managers. And I think over the years that's created a really positive work environment for me and made it really enjoyable going to work every day. And also, I guess on the flip side, I've been really lucky to have had strong relationships with bosses and, founders of companies who've been really gracious and, helping me along over the years. So kind of goes back to that community thing we talked about of, having a strong network of people around you. And I guess that's the way I prefer to operate in the workplace. I think some people, maybe they prefer to be less personal, but I like to get to know people. So for me, I think that would be maybe one of the skill sets that has kind of propelled me forward over the years. And then I probably would say the other one is, I don't know if this is a skill set either, but I think I care about the mission of my work, and that also keeps me going. So, a lot of the projects I'm on, I've been really lucky that, I can see how it might directly improve patient experience. For example, if I do a global patient surveying in, bladder cancer, it's asking people where their bladder cancer care could have been better, and directly putting that on paper, publishing it, and putting it in front of decision makers and saying, these are things that need to be done better. So I've had a lot of projects that I really actually care about the mission and care about making a difference in the lives of the people that the projects affect. So that keeps me motivated and keeps me going, and probably helps me perform better in the workplace. So those are my two things.
And with both of those, the passion for them is just seeping through as you're sharing it with us. So you pick two that certainly are applicable, as you say, in so many ways, but love how you've connected it to the work that you're doing. Paul, what about you?
For me, I would probably say my first skill would be my work ethic, quite frankly. And this has probably been something that's been ingrained in me from my parents, starting at a young age. But I think my goal in my profession is I always wanted to outwork everybody, every coach, every other team, every player when I played. That's just been constantly my mindset, and that's never really changed. So regardless of what level I've been coaching at, I constantly want to have that work ethic each and every day, regardless of how the last day went, whether we won 7-0 last night or we got our butts kicked. Regardless, I show up the next day the same and continue to try to have that same mindset and work ethic. Obviously for myself and my profession, working in Calgary right now, every day you get up trying to help your players improve, get better, build on their strengths for that matter as well. But it's also for, individually as a coach, you're constantly trying to evolve, learn how you can improve, learn how you can get better. And so that's really what drives me on a daily basis, to continue to try to work at the highest level possible, again, to try to help our players get to their own dreams that they want to aspire to get to. So that'd be the first piece for me. The second skill set, which I think has been developed over time, is resiliency. And I think like any job or any profession for that matter, there's going to be adversity. Everyone thinks maybe the coaching hockey is a sexy job for that matter, but obviously there's going to be adversity over time. I've been fired twice. I've had a lot of great, awesome experiences, worked with a lot of great different people, players, etc. But there are obviously failures that come with that. I mean, there's only one team that wins a championship in every league every year. So every other team feels disappointed, and whether they were, one game away or a couple rounds away or you missed the playoffs, there's always that disappointment or that adversity you have to work through. And I think in this profession especially, you learn to be resilient. Again, you learn to rely on your work ethic and your process and your habits. And I think that those two are probably the biggest drivers for me. And speaking more so to relate to my degree, and obviously I went to the business program, not using my accounting degree on a daily basis, but I do think back as to going through the business program, the number of great experiences that I got, and the education that I received, and how that prepared me for what I do on a daily basis. And just some of those examples for me are obviously communication, right? Number one, whether it's being, communicating with a staff member or your entire coaching staff, which is no different than working in small groups in a business program, or obviously presenting to a group. I know you do, going through business school, you do a number of different presentations, and I think just being comfortable being in front of a room of people, for most, it's not an easy skill. And I think through my time at Acadia, was something that I was able to get better at and feel more comfortable doing. So that way, when I am up and talking in front of whether it's dressing room players or a handful of players for that matter, you're comfortable in those situations. And I know that my degree definitely, and my time at Acadia helped hone that skill. So I was that much more confident and comfortable in doing what I do on a daily basis. I think sometimes you take a little bit of those things for granted, quite honestly, but I do know that those are things that skills that I was able to acquire at Acadia, just going through the program that I went through.
Paul, when you hit on some key ones that I think for a lot of our listeners, well, for me anyway, is easy to connect them to the world that you live in right now, the work ethic, the resiliency, communication. But I think back to when you were a speaker at the Toronto Business Breakfast, and spoke to a room of potentially all business people or budding business professionals, and just how applicable the experience and the skill sets that you just have identified are applicable in the business world, and frankly in pretty much all of the world, right? So just really appreciate you touching on those ones again, and referencing the business degree. So going to come back to that one in just a moment. What I'd like to do is ask Shannon and Paul specifically, sort of springboarding off some comments that Heather made about what success looks like to her and how that has changed a bit. So I'm just wondering, Shannon and Paul, if you'd like to chime in a little bit on what success looks like to you.
Do you want to go first, Paul, or do you want me to go?
You go ahead, Shannon.
Go ahead.
I think that's a tricky question, and I'm still trying to figure that one out, honestly. But I think I have done a lot of reflecting on that recently, as you get older and you change jobs, and you're trying to evaluate what you're looking for. And I think I liked what Heather said earlier about it not all being career as well. I think for me in the last, year, success for me was I got married, and we settled in Toronto and have a really lovely group of friends and family around that we love spending time with, and I enjoy my life here. So I think for me, that is success in the personal space. And then career wise, I think as long as I keep, growing and developing, I think I reached a plateau after being a self-employed consultant for about 5 years. I started feeling, I was losing my motivation, losing my interest, and I started feeling a little bit, I was plateauing. So I think success for me is maybe just identifying that and finding the next opportunity and keeping things fresh, and still, enjoying your day-to-day at your job. I think not every day is going to be perfect, but I think, if you like 90% of your days, that's pretty good. So for me right now, that's kind of what I see success as, because, we would like to have a family one day. And I think, for me, success is a bit more of a balance than what I used to think it was. I used to weigh career a lot more heavily. Now I think it's balancing out a little bit. So.
Absolutely, Shannon, and truly appreciate the personal piece that you included in that, and really want to celebrate your identifying the plateau and making a change, right? And I think for a lot of people, regardless of age, that's terrifying to think of, okay, wait, I'm just going to completely take, and I'm going to use your word you used in your intro, take a leap, right?
Yeah.
And completely switch it up. But how inspiring to know that, yeah, that's for you. It was like, this plateau thing is not where I want to live. I don't want,
It's hard to know what the right thing to do is as well. You never know at the time. And, you make the leap and then you're, oh shoot, what did I do? Did I do the wrong thing? And you just kind of have to go with it. So I think, just recognizing that I was ready to move on to something different. And
absolutely. And I quickly think back to Heather, when you talked about switching degrees, right? Like there's another sort of like, okay, this is not the space that I necessarily want to be in, so I'm going to make a change. And change is so scary to so many people, right? Absolutely. Thanks for that, Paul.
I think on a, I guess, professional side, I definitely have goals and aspirations as to things that I'd like to accomplish, both from a, I guess, team perspective, but also individually. I think where I guess I don't want to say learned, but I guess my mindset maybe has changed a little bit. I think when you're younger, not that I'm old yet, but the younger me, even the earlier coach of me, let's call it 10, 12 years ago, I think you're always focused on, the next job or the next responsibility or the added responsibility, promotion, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, like I said, I've been very fortunate, spending 6 years in the NHL, getting a chance to work with some of the best people in the world, best players in the world. It's been an unbelievable experience to date. And probably 12 years ago, I never would have thought, I'd be where I am today. But what I think I've learned is to really try to just enjoy where your feet are at. And obviously, I came back to become a head coach again, to get an opportunity to become a head coach again at the junior level, rather than, be an assistant at the NHL level. And for me, obviously, I'm from the development side. It gives me a new opportunity, a different opportunity to grow as a coach and grow as an individual, for that matter, to help me hopefully down the road continue to have an opportunity to get better and improve. But being in Calgary and being in this great organization that I'm in with the Hitmen right now, I'm really just trying to enjoy where my feet are at, quite frankly. And that's the success of our current players, trying to help them individually, achieve their own goals, but also trying to have collectively something that we're trying to strive for together as a group. And I think one thing, as we kind of all probably know in today's youth, for me a little bit, is there's more I than we in a lot of it. And so for us, a real focus for what we're trying to do in Calgary. When I say we, it's not just me as the head coach, it's my staff and everyone that's involved in the organization that has to all be pulling in the same direction. But we want it to be about what we can achieve. And at the end of the day, if we can achieve something special to collect together as a group, then individuals are going to get rewarded and get to where they want to be for their own dreams and aspirations. And that's the one thing I think that how I guess would monitor success today is, how many players am I helping getting scholarships? How many players am I helping get into the NHL? How much am I helping them as people improve and grow and develop? And so really just trying to enjoy where my feet are. And on the personal side, it's very similar. Again, like I said earlier, I have a very supportive family. In this profession, we've moved. I got a 12-year-old that's lived in 8 different homes. So that kind of gives you perspective on his life. And it takes their support, obviously, my wife Kelly and both of our children's support to be willing to do what I do. So for me, part of our success, and I say our because Kelly's probably a bigger help in this part than me. But part of that success for me is setting our kids up to have every opportunity to be successful in their own lives. And I think that's a huge factor for me as we move forward, is making sure we're giving them every opportunity to be successful and to also chase their own dreams. We talked about, not being afraid of going after it. I really feel when I left the accounting job to get an assistant coaching job in the OHL, I can guarantee it was not a monetary decision by any means, and did not use my business thinking degree to get that decision. That was the heartstrings. And I think for everyone that's on the fence about what they want to do, for me, you can't be afraid to go after it. And I think hopefully, if my kids learn anything from myself, it's that I'm not afraid to chase dreams, not afraid to go after things, not afraid of hard challenges. And I think with any profession, we all have to be open to that. And yes, it's like you said, Oonagh, it's going to be scary. And like any job that I do, come into a new job, there's 22 different players, there's 10 or 15 different staff members that I don't know, that I have to learn about and build relationships with and try to make feel important. And I think when every team that I've been on, whether it's at Acadia or an accounting firm or any team that I've worked for, the best people or best teams I've been on, everyone's felt like they've had a role and they've been important. So if we can get that kind of feeling here in Calgary, then I guess I'd define that as successful.
It truly is amazing how often teams, regardless of what type of team you're talking about, is leads to success, individual success as well as team success. And Paul, I think you touched on resiliency, and I'm pretty sure that Cooper's resiliency is building as he's moving around with you. I mean, great points, right? As a 12-year-old, having lived in 8 places so far, like adaptability, these are some of the skills that, unbeknownst to sort of you right in front of you, that's what's happening, right? That's great stuff. So I'm going to ask now about challenges, and I'm just going to kind of pave the way a little bit. So I'm currently giving you a couple of minutes to think about your response to this question. For anyone who's listening and people who will view the recording later on, you've all come from some very different places, and you've all landed in very different places. It really just struck me how eclectic the three of you are in this conversation. It's awesome. But a lot of positivity, of course. Thank you very much for that in the conversation. But a couple of you have sort of touched a little bit on adversity. I mean, God love you, Paul. You said I was fired twice. So talk to me a little bit about a challenge or two. Pick one if you want, or just in general, that really kind of threw you on your side, and you went, okay, wait a second. Because we all face it in our lives. Absolutely, some face way more than others. So just what stands out for you, and sort of how did you find your way out of it?
So I think, Paul just talked about dreams and going and chasing those. And that's something I can really relate to. And just like, no matter what, just getting at it and driving forward and feeling that sense of purpose that Shannon talked about. You feel you're on the right track when you have that sense, when I have that sense of purpose, and where passion and purpose intersect has always been where I've found a sweet spot. And so in the last few years since having kids, I left a job well, basically my favorite thing in the world was just McPhee, to try something new, and to in some ways, when you create something, or when you're at the beginning of a startup, or you design something, one of the hardest things is to let it go. But you must like like kids, at one point we gotta let them go, or like you're gonna hold on as long as we can. But and that was hard, and what that actually spun into was many years of trying new things while having kids. And this past year in particular, I had my dream job, what I thought. I had challenge in front of me, which I absolutely love. Like, if I'm not moving forward, I'm not happy. So I love a challenge. I love like striving for the best version of myself, and that in hand is, in my mindset, the best version of an organization that I can contribute to. But I left a dream job. I left, and it was in my best interest. And that sentence to me is hard, because that's not something I often think about, is what's in service of me. And that's Gen Zers are a little different. Half of my staff in this, but that was an incredibly hard thing to do. So in the last few years, I've flip-flopped a few jobs, and I've learned a lot. And every job I've had has brought me different skills and different things I bring to the next one. Some good, and some I think after all this, the most constant in my life is, I know what I don't want, versus I know what I do want. And that, to me, makes me ever learning and growing, is that idea of, like, I don't know if I've hit the sweet spot completely, but I'm going to keep growing and trying, and reflecting, and trying to be introspective to, what could be with what is. And that reconciliation of those two thoughts. I think my second one, I'll just say, is one of my kids had a really tough beginning. And that threw us for a complete loop. And we knew before he was born, and that he would be potentially, like, just diagnosed with something that I caught when I was pregnant. And that will be with us our whole lives. And it's a challenge that, some people are like, oh, like, the world wouldn't give you something that you couldn't do, and all of that. But honestly, like, it's a lot. And we adore him, and he's perfect the way he is. And he's the funniest dude ever. And he's going to rock the world and move across the world, and we'll never see him, but because he's just an adventurous little guy at 2. But marry that with trying to figure out what does success look like, and alignment. Those have been 2 really challenging duo to deal with at the same time. So I think we're not anywhere, or I certainly am still growing and learning from the last year or 2. But what has become pivotally important, or what I've noticed over time, and just this goes back to our rec degree, is like the value of, and the impact the physical activity has, the impact of, like, writing, the impact of making space to find some intentional purpose for oneself. And I often brush those things off in the past. Like, I can deal with anything. It's fine. I'll just keep going and whatever. But the last few years have really put me in my place. And going back to the basics, I think, can mean the world to me. So.
Thank you very much for sharing, Heather. Really appreciate that. And really appreciate the point that you made about figuring out what you don't want and figuring out what you don't like, and how important that is. I think back to one of my son's first jobs, and when he finished it, he said, "I know one thing, I'm not doing that again." And and it's paring those things away is just as well, to your point, probably more important than some of the stuff that you go, yeah, okay, that's good, right? It's the process of elimination, as my grade 7 literature teacher used to say. Thank you again, Heather, for sharing. Shannon or Paul?
I'll keep it brief because I know we're getting close to time, but I would say, just kind of thinking about it, that the biggest challenges for me would be around not knowing. My career path is not linear. There's no, end goal for me. I'm not a medical professional with like a concrete trajectory, or it's not very clear cut. So I think for me, the biggest challenge is always trying to figure out what's next. And when I reach those plateaus, trying to evaluate where I want to go next. And, where do I want to be in 20 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years, 5 years? But I think, I had a plateau moment when I was about to graduate Acadia, where I didn't know what I wanted to do and did a lot of research and a lot of soul searching. And I eventually figure it out. And I think for me, that would be the biggest challenge, is just, what comes next.
Absolutely, Shannon, and as you say that, I think you all know that that my younger son just graduated, right? So is very much in that space, and he keeps coming back to me with a saying that I've said to both of them all growing up: "You only know what you know when you know it."
That's good. Yeah, you always figure it out.
That's right. Oh,
It's a difficult question for me to answer, quite frankly. I think there's a lot of challenges in my profession, I guess, is the way I would look at it. The biggest challenge for myself, I think, individually, and it's not, getting fired, or it's trying to enjoy the moments more. And I think in my profession, anyways, for myself personally, anyways, you get lost because I love this job and I love the game and I love doing what I'm doing on a daily basis. You get into the grind of the season where, day after day, you're trying to always find ways to get better, always find ways to build on strengths, always looking for the next thing, the next game, the next opponent. And sometimes you don't take enough time to enjoy the great moments, because there's a lot of tough moments, right? You lose game 7 in the playoffs, in the second round of the NHL playoffs. You get fired. There's all these other difficult things that are not easy to get over, but you do. Because you're resilient. But I think the challenge for me is trying to enjoy the little things, trying to enjoy the day to day, try to enjoy all the small victories that you do have, because those are obviously why we do what we do, why we love what we do. So for me, it's trying to make sure that not just me, but my staff, my players, everyone, we enjoy and have a little bit more fun, and probably take a little bit of my seriousness off every once in a while, anyways, as to making sure that this game that I obviously love, it all started from a place where we love playing the game, love being on the ice, and that's what it has to always come back to for me. So that's really I guess my biggest challenge on a daily basis.
Paul, I can see a book in your future. I'm fairly certain that there's going to be an autobiography, and the title of it is going to be "Where My Feet Are." I think I'm going to buy it. So you just let us know. Let us know
I'll
when
let
it's
Kelly
ready.
write it. Kelly can write it. She's the English major, so.
Yeah, perfect. You've got a proofreader. That's amazing. So Shannon, thank you for keeping us on task. And we did have somebody in the audience say that they had to jump off. I'm normally pretty good at keeping us on schedule from 7 to 8. So recognizing that we're at the 8 o'clock hour in local time anyway, we've got folks from various parts of the world with us. Just a true thank you to the three of you. And I'm not just saying this, we could go on for another hour. I mean, this is so great. You have such great experiences combined. I mean, like I say, we could easily be here for another hour listening to each of you and bringing such different perspectives and pursuing such different parts of the world, which is amazing for our listeners. So thank you very much to the three of you for sharing your time with us. And congratulations once again on the Outstanding Young Alumni Award and being the recipient thereof. Heather, I'm gonna count on you to be with us this year at our dinner because you're the local person, so hopefully you'll be with us in Halifax. Shannon and Paul, of course, you're welcome to join us. And thank you to folks who joined us online. And as I said, we will have a recording from this ready soon, and we'll add it to our virtual library. And I know we'll have lots of folks revisiting it afterwards. And thank you back in, Victoria, for being here, and Moira, thank you. And McKenna, thank you for joining us as well. I'm assuming maybe that McKenna's a student. We got a student number next to McKenna's name. So yeah, if McKenna, I did a horrible job of getting to the audience and asking if anyone had questions. So by all means, if you would like me to reach out to one of our speakers on your behalf with a question, we'd be happy to do that for you. So just a wrap up to say once again that our Outstanding Young Alumni Award recipient for this year is Maya Makatumbag Murray, and we'll be honoring her, stunt performer, at our alumni dinner this year. And then our next virtual event will be a panel of former athletes for Black History Month. So maybe you can join us for that. And we'll take our goodbyes now. And thank you folks very much again.